So I think it's safe to say they made the right choice. Back at the beginning of time, Eru said to Melkor that all his works shall prove but by an instrument. And this horrible act of Saruman, breeding orcs, sending them after the hobbits, killing Boromir, and forcing Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli to make a choice, it all starts a few pebbles running downhill, catching larger and larger rocks, and then boulders until it's a massive avalanche of fate-directed actions saving the world. Hello everybody and welcome to Aude and Tulava, where we're walking our way through Tolkien's Legendarium. We are back and starting with the Two Towers. We're going over chapter 1 of book 3, The Departure of Boromir. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Some favorite covers and versions are linked in the description below. Memberships are open if you'd like to help support the channel that way. We have a new partnership with the channel, Chapters Tea and Coffee. Chapters spring from a passion for story. They set out to elevate the stories we all love by teaming up with independent artists to hand draw beautiful imagery and pair it with specially selected artisanal tea. My favorite is Second Breakfast, of course. Go to drinkchapters.com/Hurin and use code HURIN15 to get 15% off. I do earn a small commission for every bag sold, so thank you in advance. It's a great way to sit down and enjoy the books that we all love. That's drinkchapters.com/Hurin and use code HURIN15 to get 15% off. All right, let's dive in. The Fellowship ended with Sam and Frodo parting from the rest of the company, and up until this point, the story was pretty linear. We followed Frodo and the people with him. We only got other pieces of the story when other people were with Frodo telling him what happened somewhere else. But now we're starting to get interlacing, multiple threads of story all kind of weaving together. Tom Shippey talks about it longer in Author of the Century, but Tolkien here starts as multiple threads, but they don't always line up in the telling. It's not like he follows Aragorn and Legolas for 2 days and then follows Merry and Pippin for 2 days and back and forth. We get a couple days with one, then pushes forward further, then disappears for a while until two paths cross again. We get Merry and Pippin telling the others what happened in the missing time. Shippey points out this technique creates a profound sense of reality, of that being the way things are. There is a pattern in Tolkien's story, but his characters can never see it, naturally because they are in it. And it all works together, because if we lose one part of the story, the whole thing really just kind of falls apart, so let's not lose any part of it. Aragorn sped on up the hill. Every now and again, he bent to the ground. Hobbits go light, and their footprints are not easy even for a ranger to read. But not far from the top, a spring crossed the path, and in the wet earth he saw what he was seeking. I read the signs are right, he said to himself. Frodo ran to the hilltop. I wonder what he saw there. But he returned by the same way and went down the hill again. Aragorn hesitated. He desired to go to the high seat himself, hoping to see there something that would guide him in his perplexities. But time was pressing. Suddenly he leaped forward and ran to the summit, across the great flagstones and up the steps. Then sitting in the high seat, he looked out. But the sun seemed darkened and the world dim and remote. He turned from the north back again to north. He saw nothing save the distant hills, unless it were that far away he could see again a great bird like an eagle high in the air, descending slowly in wide circles down towards the earth. So right off the bat, Tolkien is making sure we know Aragorn's limits. But we also learn that luck is still on his side, even though for once, Tolkien doesn't specifically state it. But with that little bit of luck, Aragorn's guess is pretty much spot on. Frodo went up the hill and came back down the same way. And as expected, Aragorn goes to look from the seat of Aemon Hen. Being the rightful heir of the kings of Gondor, he would expect he would be able to utilize all the magic in the seat. I mean, Frodo did it, right? He got to see tons of stuff and essentially became like a beacon that Sauron himself almost found. But what does Aragorn see? Distant hills. That's it. Oh, and an eagle spiraling down towards the earth. I bet that's super helpful. As a quick side note, remember Gandalf reached Lorien within a couple days of the company leaving, so I really don't think that's Gandalf being rescued or anything there. But I guess it depends on the direction. Anyway, Hammond and Skull direct us to the Treason of Isengard, Volume 7 of the History of Middle-earth. We see Trotter, the original Aragorn, sitting on the seat of Aemon Hen and seeing some cool visions, including like a gray cloaked figure with a flash gleaming white underneath. But at the end of that text, Christopher Tolkien lets us know, my father wrote, the second vision on Aemon Hen is inartistic. Let Trotter be stopped by noise of orcs and let him see nothing. Adding on to that, Christopher talks about how the fact that his father made a point to show it was the power of Aemon Hen that worked on Frodo to let him see his visions and not the power of the ring. So if we take that into account, then Christopher writes, the final text of Frodo's vision is less explicit, and if this is associated with the fact that in the final form Aragorn does go up but sees nothing, it may suggest a more complex relationship between the power of Aemon Hen and the power of the ring, a relation which is not uncommon. So all that to say, we don't know why Aragorn saw nothing on the top of Aemon Hen. It appears Tolkien just thought it was too on the nose and didn't want to have it in there. It's a fun little thought exercise though. But back to things we do know. Even as he gazed, his quick ears caught sounds in the woodlands below. On the west side of the river, he stiffened. There were cries, and among them, to his horror, he could distinguish the harsh voices of orcs. Then suddenly, with a deep-throated call, a great horn blew, and the blast of it smote the hills and echoed in the hollows, rising in a mighty shout above the roaring of the falls. "The horn of Boromir!" he cried. "He is in need!" He sprang down the steps and away, leaping down the path. "Alas, an ill fate is on me this day, and all that I do goes amiss. Where is Sam?" So here we have Tolkien making us feel honestly a little bad for Aragorn. He's trying to see something that would be helpful to him in his decision-making, but he sees nothing. Not even anything helpful, he just sees nothing. Then he hears orcs, and not just them talking or sneaking or something, they're crying out, it's loud. If they're not worried about stealth, then something is definitely wrong. Then he hears Boromir's horn, and he knows Boromir is in trouble. And to top it all off, he realizes Sam is missing as he runs back down to help Boromir. It's really no wonder that he has, the woe is me moment. From his perspective, it really sure feels like he can't make the right decision, and everything is coming apart at the seams for him. Everyone went crazy, started sprinting in different directions, and the person who has the most dangerous artifact in the world is missing, along with his gardener. But what I'll definitely give him credit for is that he keeps moving. He may not know in the grand scheme of things what to do yet, but he knows what has to happen right now, and that get to Boromir, try and help him. Now, as Aragorn finds Boromir, we have a sad and awe-inspiring scene unfolding before us. Boromir is pierced by many arrows, but though his horn is cloven in two, there are many enemies slain piled around him and at his feet, almost as if, even as he fell, he was still dispatching enemies until they all ran away. Aragorn knelt beside him. Boromir opened his eyes and strove to speak. At last, slow words came. "I tried to take the ring from Frodo," he said. "I'm sorry. I've paid." His glance strayed to his fallen enemies. 20 at least lay there. "They have gone. The halflings. The orcs have taken them. I think they are not dead. Orcs bound them." He paused and his eyes closed wearily. After a moment, he spoke again. "Farewell, Aragorn. Go to Minas Tirith and save my people. I have failed." "No," said Aragorn, taking his hand and kissing his brow. "You have conquered. Few have gained such a victory. Be at peace. Minas Tirith shall not fall." Boromir smiled. "Which way did they go? Was Frodo there?" said Aragorn. But Boromir did not speak again. Now, Hammond and Skull point out that some readers were struck by Boromir's passing as something close to a Christian death. I'll admit I never thought about it that way. But after reading Tolkien Dogmatics and going to Rome a couple months ago, I actually really see it. Boromir confesses to his sin of trying to steal the ring from Frodo. He does his penance, or some might say, earns an indulgence by protecting Merry and Pippin. We can even see the ring wearing off of him as his final thoughts are towards his people and asking Aragorn to protect them. Aragorn even offers his forgiveness, a brotherly kiss on the forehead, even telling Boromir to be at peace. Now, I'm not saying it's like a direct parallel or, heaven forbid, allegory. All I'm saying is I can see the parallel and why others would think so. And I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts in the comments. Did Tolkien do this on purpose, kind of have it be a Christian death? Or do you think it was just kind of maybe an unconscious thing, his beliefs kind of forming such a foundation in him that it just came out naturally? So I'd love to know, let me know. I definitely don't think it's meant to be allegory. For the record, Tolkien was always careful about using allegory. And if you've read the foreword, you know The Lord of the Rings is definitely not an allegory, and nor is Tolkien a big fan of allegory. Yes, even though he wrote Leaf by Nigel. That's a whole different discussion though. But I do think it bubbled up from deep within him. I don't think he necessarily went forward with any of his stories, like having the one Eru Ilúvatar, by thinking, okay, I have to create one god and a bunch of angel-type beings because that's what Catholicism says is there. I think it all just kind of made sense to him as he was writing it. And as, like we talked about last time, or last video, he thinks himself a sub-creator based on his creator. It just kind of makes sense. He also borrowed from so many other writings, possibly without thinking because he just knew them so well. I think it's just very possible it all just kind of came out. A little while later, Gimli and Legolas come back. I'm going to skip this paragraph, but I want to point out that it says they halted in amazement. This is the awe I was talking about that Aragorn comes upon. Many slain enemies piled around Boromir. Maybe he didn't kill 70 orcs like Hurin did, but it's a feat no one has accomplished, probably in a long time. "Alas," said Aragorn, coming to Aragorn's side, "we have hunted and slain many orcs in the woods, but we should have been of more use here. We came when we heard the horn, but too late it seems. I fear you have taken deadly hurt. Boromir is dead, said Aragorn. I'm unscathed, for I was not here with him. He fell defending the hobbits while I was away upon the hill. The hobbits! Cried Gimli. Where are they then? Where's Frodo? I do not know, answered Aragorn wearily. Before he died, Boromir told me that the orcs had bound them. He did not think that they were dead. I sent him to follow Merry and Pippin, but I did not ask him if Frodo or Sam were with him. Not until it was too late. All that I have done today has gone to mess. What is to be done now? First, we must tend the fallen, said Legolas. We cannot leave him lying like carrion among these foul orcs. This exchange is pretty cool for really a couple of reasons. One, I love that the first thing we hear from Gimli is an exclamation about the two lost hobbits. Legolas here seems pretty matter of fact. He's just kind of relating information, though he does seem sorrowful that they weren't there to help sooner. But Gimli cried out when he learned the hobbits were taken. And then we get a wonderfully vulnerable Aragorn. He states his concern again, everything he has done has gone wrong. But then he asks the other two what they should do. Now, I can't recall another place in the entire book, unless maybe a couple times he's talked to Gandalf, where he actually asks, not just for help, but for advice. And I really love that. Why, you may ask? Because it shows that he's not really just this one-dimensional character that just, I want to be king. He goes through a character arc, unlike many criticisms I've heard about the story. It may be more subtle character arc than people are used to, but isn't that what really makes it great? Legolas answers Aragorn's questions with practicality. They need to bury Boromir. They can't leave him to rot next to his evil foes. He deserves more honor than that. So they decide that even though there are 4 missing hobbits, they will lay Boromir in a boat and send him down the river, as that's the only practical way. Hammond and Skoll mention that ship burial in which the deceased is sent out to sea in a boat, of its nature leaves no traces but is well attested in literature. So we see it in Beowulf as well as other places, and there is some archaeological evidence of it as well, not a ton, obviously. This is another case of wondering if Tolkien was specifically trying to bring Beowulf into this new story, or whether it just kind of made sense because the story was just so ingrained in him. I mean, he did a translation after all. We may never know unless there's some hidden page like notes that Christopher Tolkien brings up somewhere in History of Middle-earth that I haven't gotten to yet. As the 3 companions begin to gather everything in the area up, they find the hobbit knives, grab them in a fit of optimism so they can give them back to the hobbits, which is a wonderful little twist of fate. And Aragorn notices something else. And Aragorn looked at the slain and he said, "Here lie many that are not folk of Mordor. Some are from the north, from the Misty Mountains, if I know anything of orcs and their kinds. And here are others strange to me. Their gear is not after the mantle of orcs at all. There were 4 goblin soldiers of greater stature, swart, slant-eyed, with thick legs and large hands. They were armed with short, broad-bladed swords, not with the curved scimitars usual with orcs. And they had bows of yew, in length and shape like the bows of men. Upon their shields they bore a strange device, a small white hand in the center of a black field. On the front of their iron helmets was set an S rune, wrought of some white metal. I have not seen these tokens before," said Aragorn. "So what do they mean?" "S is for Sauron," said Gimli. "That is easy to read." "Nay," said Legolas, "Sauron does not use the elf runes. Neither does he use his right name, nor permit it to be spelt or spoken," said Aragorn. "And he does not use white. The orcs in the service of Barad-dûr use the sign of the red eye." So as they search the fallen enemies, they find orcs of unusual sizes, but with a rune of the letter S on their gear. Gimli thinks it stands for Sauron, but Legolas disagrees because Sauron does use elf runes. Now, I can almost hear you asking, or you already know the answer, but Sauron inscribed the poem on the One Ring using Elvish, and you would be right. And I also thought about that. But what I realized is this will be a pretty short response to a hypothetical question. Sauron uses Tengwar on the ring, Elven script, not Elven runes. So I'd call it a fine distinction, yes. Even though runes and letters, what a script is made out of, are essentially the same, there is a difference. Elven runes are called Kirth. They're angular and probably a lot easier to carve or chisel onto stone or something. Tengwar is used on the ring and it's more flowy. So it's really just largely a semantic argument. Legolas is technically correct, though that is the best kind of correct. What's more interesting is the fact that Aragorn says Sauron does not allow his name to be spelled out or spoken. But what about the mouth of Sauron? He even says Sauron multiple times. We hear it once from Glowin and another time from his own mouth. If Sauron doesn't allow his name to be spoken, probably because it means the abhorred, why does the mouth use his name, and why would he have a servant with the title Mouth of Sauron? I heard one theory that Sauron just doesn't like it said in his presence and allows it to be used when he's not there. I don't fully agree with it, but I can see a reason why it could be true. And it really just kind of ease of communication. Sauron is known by everyone else as Sauron. So instead of having the mouth tell the dwarves Myron wants the ring back and the dwarves having no idea, Sauron, it's Sauron, guys. It's just easier than educating everyone. So I see kind of the merit in the idea. My other theory kind of bumps up against the last one, but also uses the excuse of translation versus education. Remember, the whole book is based on the premise that it is like an historical account or historical document found and translated by Tolkien. So the writers used whatever words they used in the common speech, and then Tolkien had to find the best translation for that to put it in English. So maybe in doing the translation, he noticed the trend of the writers using kind of different words when naming Sauron, but like similar. And to make it more easily read and understood, he just substituted the single name Sauron for like all of them. I don't know. What idea do you like better? Let me know in the comments. As the three companions begin the burial of Boromir, Aragorn stays with the body on the banks of the river. Legolas and Gimli go back to get a couple boats, one for Boromir and one for them to get back to Parthgalen together. They come back with interesting news. "There's a strange tale to tell," said Legolas. "There are only 2 boats upon the bank. We could find no trace of the other." "Have orcs been there?" asked Aragorn. "We saw no signs of them," answered Gimli. "And orcs would have taken or destroyed all the boats, and the baggage as well." "I will look at the ground when we come there," said Aragorn. And I love this interaction. As readers, we all know why the boat is missing. We all know it answers one of their questions from earlier of where Frodo and Sam went. It's a really important answer, to a really important question. Aragorn almost gets sucked in, but he just asks one question, gets his answer, and moves on to the immediately pressing detail, Boromir. Now they laid Boromir in the middle of the boat that was to bear him away. The gray hood and elven cloak they folded and placed beneath his head. They combed his long, dark hair and arrayed it upon his shoulders. The golden belt of Lorien gleamed about his waist. His helm they set beside him, and across his lap they laid the cloven horn and the hilt and shards of his sword. Beneath his feet they put the swords of his enemies. Then, fastening the prow to the stern of the other boat, they drew him out into the water. They rowed sadly along the shore, and turning into the swift-running channel, they passed the green sward of Parthgalen. The steep sides of Tol Brandir were glowing. It was now mid-afternoon. As they went south, the fumes of Rauras rose and shimmered before them, a haze of gold. The rush and thunder of the falls shook the windless air. Sorrowfully, they cast loose the funeral boat. There Boromir lay, restful, peaceful, gliding upon the bosom of the flowing water. The stream took him while they held their own boat back with their paddles. He floated by them, and slowly his boat departed, waning to a dark spot against the golden light, and then suddenly it vanished. Rauras roared on unchanging. The river had taken Boromir, son of Denethor, and he was not seen again in Minas Tirith, standing as he used to stand upon the White Tower in the morning. But in Gondor and after days, it was long said that the elven boat rode the falls and the foaming pool, and bore him down through Osgiliath, and past the many miles of Anduin, out into the great sea at night, under the stars. Honestly, for me here, there's not much to say about this. It's a sorrowful passage. I will say this though. If we were meant to revile Boromir the way some people do, saying he's just a bad guy the whole time, he's just trying to figure out how to get the ring, would Tolkien have written such a beautiful, haunting passage about his burial? The more I read, and after listening to Corey Olsen, I realized Boromir was honestly, he was just an honorable man. He was loved by those under him in Gondor. By all accounts, he treated them fairly. He fell under the temptation that even a Maya couldn't overcome, and the Maya never even saw the ring the way he did. After the boat passes out of sight and down the falls of Rauras, Aragorn starts the funeral dirge. Through Rohan, over fen and field, where the long grass grows, the west wind comes walking, and about the walls it goes. What news from the west, O wandering wind, do you bring to me tonight? Have you seen Boromir the Tall by moon or by starlight? I saw him ride over 7 streams, over waters wide and gray. I saw him walk in empty lands until he passed away. Into the shadows of the north I saw him then no more. The north wind may have heard the horn of the son of Denethor. O Boromir, from the high walls westward I looked afar, but you came not from the empty lands where no men are. There are 2 other stanzas. You can look it up. And I beg you to read them aloud to yourself. Find the rhythm and read it. As far as I can tell, since I'm pretty new to the whole dissecting poems like this, it's iambic heptameter. Stress on the second syllable of each foot and 7 of those metrical feet in each line. And it's truly beautiful. Again, find the rhythm, read it. When you have the rhythm, it becomes, 1, quite a bit easier to get through. And same thing goes for kind of reading it out loud, helps you get the rhythm too. Now, Hammond and Skull make a couple cool observations here regarding some of the things Aragorn mentions in his singing. First, the west wind is the first wind addressed because Boromir rode west when he was leaving Minas Tirith. Pretty simple, never thought about that before, but it makes sense. The 7 streams mentioned is a little bit more interesting. If you look at the map of Middle-earth, there aren't really 7 streams between Minas Tirith and Rivendell. I mean, I don't know, there might be some tiny streams, but not like 7 rivers streams kind of thing. In Treason of Isengard, Boromir states he followed a path on his way to Rivendell through the Gap of Rohan and the Country of 7 Streams, so Hammond and Skull say this is probably a leftover from an earlier draft. Christopher Tolkien discusses the issue for like 3 full pages in Treason of Isengard, but does not even come to a conclusion. Now, neither of those little tidbits change how I read the book, but what I love is every little fact, like an uncovered secret, makes it easier to find the next one and the next one and so on. With every little discovery, I understand Tolkien and his way of thinking while writing and revising more and more, and I get more and more meaning out of his writing. After singing the rest of the song, they row back to Parth Galen. Aragorn has a hard time reading the tracks as there were so many prints, but was able to see one small pair of footprints wade into the water and never come back. Gimli desperately needs to know the answer to this riddle. Aragorn did not answer at once, but went back to the camping place and looked at the baggage. 2 packs are missing, he said, and one is certainly Sam's. It was rather large and heavy. This then is the answer. Frodo has gone by boat, and the servant has gone with him. Frodo must have returned while we were all away. I met Sam going up the hill and told him to follow me, but plainly he did not do so. He guessed his master's mind and came back here before Frodo had gone. He did not find it easy to leave Sam behind. But why should he leave us behind, and without a word? Said Gimli. That was a strange deed. And a brave deed, said Aragorn. Sam was right, I think. Frodo did not wish to lead any friend to death with him in Mordor. But he knew that he must go himself. Something happened after he left us that overcame his fear and doubt. Maybe hunting orcs came on him and he fled, said Legolas. He fled, certainly, said Aragorn, but not, I think, from orcs. What he thought was the cause of Frodo's sudden resolve in flight, Aragorn did not say. The last words of Boromir he long kept secret. So Aragorn here hits the nail exactly on the head on both accounts. This is exactly what happened, obviously, as Frodo began to leave and Sam caught up with him. He's also right about why Frodo is trying to leave in secret. Over and over, we've seen Frodo be sorely troubled over others having to deal with what he deems as his own inheritance. But he and Sam are gone. Merry and Pippin are taken prisoner, at least at this point, presumably by the orcs. They've spent hours, rightly, burying Boromir. Which group are they to follow? Let me think, said Aragorn, and now may I make a right choice and change the evil fate of this unhappy day. He stood silent for a moment. I will follow the orcs, he said at last. I would have guided Frodo to Mordor and gone with him to the end. But if I seek him now in the wilderness, I must abandon the captives to torment and death. My heart speaks clearly at last. The fate of the bearer is in my hands no longer. The company has played its part. Yet we that remain cannot forsake our companions while we have strength left. Come, we will go now. Leave all that can be spared behind. We will press on by day and dark. So I think it's safe to say they made the right choice. Back at the beginning of time, Eru said to Melkor that all his works shall prove but mine instrument. And this horrible act of Saruman, breeding orcs, sending them after the hobbits, killing Boromir, and forcing Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli to make a choice, it all starts a few pebbles running downhill, catching larger and larger rocks, and then boulders until it's a massive avalanche of fate-directed actions saving the world. Or something like that. Now, having made their choice and with clear consciences, the 3 hunters go after their prey. Yes, said Aragorn, we shall all need the endurance of dwarves, but come. With hope or without hope, we will follow the trail of our enemies, and woe to them if we prove the swifter. We will make such a chase as shall be accounted a marvel among the 3 kindreds, elves, dwarves, and men. Forth the 3 hunters. Like a deer he sprang away. Through the trees he sped, on and on he led them, tireless and swift. Now that his mind was at last made up. The woods about the lake they left behind. Long slopes they climbed, dark, hard-edged against the sky already red with sunset. Dusk came. They passed away, gray shadows in the stony lane. And we come to the end of the first chapter of The Two Towers. Thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Buy a new version of the book you don't already have in the description. Join the channel membership. Don't forget to claim your 15% off chapters, tea, and coffee. The book and these videos are best enjoyed with a lovely beverage on hand. And until next time, out into the day shall come again.